I'll only warn you once. Get ready. South Carolina is wilder, stranger, and far more mind-blowing than you could ever imagine. And when you get to the stories at the end, you'll know exactly why I say this. 33. The Lizard Man of Scape Ore Swamp. Imagine a humid summer night in 1988 when a young man named Christopher Davis stopped to change a flat tire near the murky Scape Ore Swamp in Lee County. Suddenly, a 7-foot-tall creature with glowing red eyes and 3 clawed fingers emerged from the darkness to terrorize him. This beast, known as the Lizard Man, did not just scare the lad, it leaped onto the roof of his car, leaving deep scratches in the metal and biting the side mirror as he sped away. For decades, the locals have whispered about this reptilian resident hiding among the cypress knees and Spanish moss. Whether it was a prehistoric remnant or a figment of a panicked mind, the legend sparked a media frenzy that drew thousands of monster hunters to the quiet town of Bishopville, forever cementing the creature into the folklore of the state. 32. The Ring of Alice Flag. The marshy beauty of Murrells Inlet hides a heartbreaking story of forbidden love and a restless spirit. In the mid-19th century, Alice Flag fell in love with a man her family deemed unworthy. To keep their engagement secret, she wore his ring on a ribbon around her neck. When she fell ill with malaria, her brother discovered the hidden jewelry and, in a fit of rage, snatched it and threw it into the salt marsh. Alice died soon after, and she was buried in the All Saints Episcopal Church Cemetery under a plain stone marked simply with her name. Since that day, visitors have reported seeing a lady in a white dress wandering the grounds and the nearby Hermitage plantation. She is said to be searching the grass for her lost token of love, and many leave rings on her grave to comfort her soul. 31. The Gray Man of Pawleys Island. If you are ever walking the beach at Pawleys Island and see a figure dressed in gray standing amidst the dunes, you should take heed immediately. Since 1822, the Gray Man has appeared to residents just before the arrival of a major hurricane. Legend says he was a young man returning from sea to marry his sweetheart, but he was thrown from his horse and perished in the treacherous Pluff mud. His spirit now serves as a spectral sentinel, warning those he encounters to flee the coming wrath of the ocean. Those who have seen him and heeded his silent warning often find their homes miraculously spared, while the surrounding area is decimated. During Hurricane Hugo in 1989, many locals claim to have seen this silent protector standing tall against the wind, a ghostly guardian of the South Carolina coast. Before continuing, be sure to subscribe and leave a like to keep discovering the strange and incredible history of our entire country. 30. The Vengeful Hound of Goshen. Deep within the Sumter National Forest, along the winding Old Buncombe Road, travelers have long whispered about a terrifying white dog with eyes like burning coals. The Ghost Hound of Goshen is said to be the spirit of a loyal canine whose master was unjustly hanged for a crime he did not commit. In the mid-19th century, after the execution, the dog sat by the master's grave until it too passed away. However, its spirit remained, patrolling the road to exact revenge on those who traverse the area at night. It is described as a massive beast that can leap across the road in a single bound or run alongside a galloping horse without tiring. Locals warn that if the hound stops and stares you down, bad luck will follow you home, as the beast still guards the honor of its wronged owner. 29. The Pirate Queen's Secret. Long before she was the terror of the Caribbean, the infamous Anne Bonny spent her formative years in the bustling port of Charlestown. Born in Ireland, she was brought to South Carolina by her father, a wealthy merchant who established a plantation. Anne was no typical debutante. She was known for a fierce temper and a rebellious spirit that could not be contained by society. Legend has it, she once stabbed a servant girl with a table knife during a fit of rage. When she eventually eloped with a penniless sailor against her father's wishes, she turned her back on her inheritance and set sail for a life of piracy. While her exploits on the high seas with Calico Jack are legendary, her story began in the humid streets of Charleston, where the fire of her legendary defiance was first ignited in the colonial sun. 28. The Spirits of the Angel Oak. On Johns Island stands a magnificent southern live oak that has watched the world change for over 400 years. The Angel Oak, with its massive, winding limbs that dip into the earth and rise again, is more than just a botanical wonder. It is a site of deep spiritual significance. Local folklore suggests that the spirits of former inhabitants, particularly those who were enslaved on the surrounding plantation, linger within its vast canopy. Some say the tree was a meeting place place for the Gullah people, who believed the angels brought the spirits of ancestors to rest in its shade. During the night, visitors have claimed to see ethereal lights flickering among the Spanish moss and heard soft whispers carried on the breeze. It remains a sacred anchor for the community, embodying the enduring strength and the haunted memories of the Low Country's complex and storied past. 27. The night Columbia burned. The evening of February 17th, 1865, remains one of the most debated and tragic moments in the history of the state, as General Sherman's Union troops entered the capital city of Columbia. A series of fires broke out that would eventually consume much of the town. Whether the blaze was started by retreating Confederate soldiers burning cotton bales, drunken Union troops seeking revenge, or a simple accident fanned by high winds, the result was a landscape of smoking ruins. The city's residents watched in horror as their homes and the old state house were swallowed by the inferno. For generations, the scars of that night have shaped the local narrative, serving as a powerful symbol of the devastation of the Civil War. Even today, the mystery of who actually struck the match remains a hot topic in the parlors and classrooms of the capital. 26. The legacy of Dr. John de la Howe. In the late 18th century, a French physician named Dr. John de la Howe settled in the Abbeville district, bringing with him a vision that was far ahead of its time. Upon his death in 1797, his will stipulated that his entire estate, the Lethe plantation, be used to establish an agricultural school for orphaned and underprivileged children. This was the first manual labor school of its kind in the United States, focusing on teaching practical skills in farming and mechanics alongside traditional academics. The school eventually became a state agency and continues to operate today as the South Carolina Governor's School for Agriculture. Dr. de la Howe's tomb, located on the property, is a quiet reminder of a man who believed that the future of the state lay in the hands of its youth and the tilling of its fertile soil. 25. The final voyage of the H.L. Hunley. The H.L. Hunley was a marvel of 19th century engineering, a hand-cranked Confederate submarine that made history on a cold February night in 1864. It became the first combat submarine to sink an enemy warship, the USS Housatonic, in the waters of Charleston Harbor. However, after the successful attack, the Hunley signaled the shore and then vanished into the dark Atlantic. For over a century, the fate of the 8-man crew remained one of the greatest maritime mysteries in the world. When the vessel was finally discovered in 1995 and raised in 2000, researchers found the crew still seated at their stations, seemingly undisturbed. The discovery sparked intense debate about how they died, with theories ranging from oxygen depletion to the concussive force of their own torpedo, leaving behind a haunting legacy of naval innovation and tragic sacrifice. 24. The shadows of the Provost Dungeon. Beneath the historic Old Exchange building in Charleston lies a cold, damp space known as the Provost Dungeon, where the air still feels heavy with the weight of the past. During the American Revolution, British forces occupied the city and converted this basement into a prison for American patriots and prisoners of war. Men were crammed into the dark, airless cells, enduring disease and starvation, while the sounds of British parties echoed from the Great Hall directly above them. Among the prisoners were 3 signers of the Declaration of Independence. Legend says that the suffering of those held within the brick walls left a permanent mark on the building. To this day, tour guides and visitors report hearing the clinking of chains and seeing shadowy figures moving in the corners of the dungeon, reminding all who enter of the high price paid for American liberty. 23. The cry of the Stono Rebellion. In September of 1739, the largest slave uprising in the British mainland colonies erupted along the banks of the Stono River. Led by an enslaved man named Jemmy, a group of literate Congolese men seized weapons from a local store and began a march toward Spanish Florida, where freedom had been promised to any who reached its borders. They marched with banners and chanted the word liberty, gathering nearly 80 followers as they moved south. The rebellion was eventually suppressed by the local militia in a series of bloody skirmishes, but the impact was profound. The event led to the passage of the Negro Act of 1740, which severely restricted the rights and movements of enslaved people for generations. The Stono Rebellion remains a powerful testament to the human desire for freedom and the volatile social tensions that defined the colonial era. 22. The master stroke at Cowpens. General Daniel Morgan was a man who understood the psychology of his soldiers better than almost any other leader in the American Revolution. In January 1781, he stood on a field known locally as Hannah's Cowpens, facing the feared British Colonel Banastre Tarleton. Morgan knew his militia might flee under pressure, so he turned their weakness into a trap. He told them to fire just 2 shots and then retreat behind his more seasoned Continental troops. When the British saw the militia run, they charged forward in a disorganized rush, believing they had already won the day. Instead, they ran straight into a wall of bayonets and a devastating volley from the hidden regulars. This tactical double envelopment was so perfect, it became a textbook maneuver studied by military leaders for centuries. The victory crippled the British forces in the south and set the stage for Yorktown. 21. The Bronze Stars of the State House. If you walk around the South Carolina State House in Columbia today, you will notice something peculiar about the granite walls on the western and southern sides. There are 6 bronze stars embedded in the stone, marking the exact spots where Union cannonballs struck the building during the burning of the city in 1865. When the war ended and the state began the long process of rebuilding, some suggested repairing the damaged masonry to hide the scars of the conflict. However, the decision was made to leave the wounds visible as a permanent reminder of the city's survival through fire and siege. These stars are not just decorations, they are the physical echoes of a day when the capital was engulfed in flames, serving as silent witnesses to the resilience of a people who refused to erase the most painful and transformative parts of their long history. 20. The Giant Peach of Gaffney. Travelers driving along Interstate 85 are often startled by the sight of a massive spherical structure that looks remarkably like a piece of fruit. This is the Gaffney Peachoid, a 1,000,000-gallon water tower that stands as a towering tribute to the state's agricultural heritage. Built in 1981, it was designed to celebrate Cherokee County's status as a leading producer of peaches, even surpassing Georgia in many years. The project was not without controversy, as some found the realistic cleft of the peach to be a bit too suggestive from certain angles. Despite the jokes and national attention, the Peachoid has become a beloved cultural landmark and a symbol of local pride. It requires a specialized painter to maintain its realistic hues, ensuring that this colossal fruit remains a juicy and iconic part of the skyline for generations of hungry travelers passing through the upstate. 19. The Secrets of the Charleston Single House. The architecture of Charleston is famous for a unique style known as the single house, which is only 1 room wide and several rooms deep. These homes were designed with a clever understanding of the humid low-country climate before the invention of modern cooling. By placing the narrow side of the house toward the street and building long, shaded porches called piazzas on the side, residents could catch the prevailing ocean breezes. These breezes would flow through the windows of every room, providing natural air conditioning during the sweltering summer months. The layout also offered a layer of privacy. The front door on the street actually opens onto the piazza rather than into the home itself. This architectural quirk reflects the ingenuity of early settlers who learned to harmonize their lifestyles with the beautiful but punishing heat of the coastal marshes while maintaining their sophisticated social norms. 18. The Labyrinth of the Bull Street Asylum. For over a century, the Babcock Building with its iconic red domed roof stood as a symbol of the South Carolina State Hospital in Columbia. Founded in the early 19th century, it was originally intended to provide humane care for the mentally ill, a revolutionary idea at the time. However, as the population grew, the facility became overcrowded and shrouded in a dark reputation. The sprawling campus was filled with tunnels and grand hallways where thousands of patients lived out their lives, often in heartbreaking conditions. Local legends speak of the heavy atmosphere that still clings to the remaining structures, with stories of phantom footsteps and distant cries echoing through the empty wards. Although the site is being transformed into a modern district, the memory of the thousands who sought healing within its walls remains a poignant and haunting chapter of the state social history that continues to fascinate modern visitors. 17. When the Earth Shook Charleston. On the night of August 31st, 1886, the ground beneath Charleston suddenly roared and buckled in one of the largest earthquakes ever recorded in the eastern United States. The initial shock lasted barely a minute, but it was powerful enough to be felt as far away as Boston and Cuba. Within the city, buildings crumbled like sandcastles, and the sky was filled with a thick cloud of dust and the screams of terrified residents. In the aftermath, the streets were littered with debris, and the survivors camped in the parks, fearing that the earth would open again. Interestingly, the disaster led to the widespread use of earthquake bolts, which are long iron rods with decorative plates on the exterior walls to reinforce the damaged brick structures. Today, these iron plates are a common sight on historic homes, marking the resilience of a city that literally rebuilt itself. 16. The elusive shadow of the swamp fox. During the darkest days of the American Revolution, a man named Francis Marion earned a nickname that would live forever in Southern lore, the swamp fox. Leading a ragtag band of irregular soldiers, Marion utilized the dense, treacherous swamps of the Low Country to wage a relentless guerrilla war against the British forces. He would strike suddenly from the shadows and then vanish into the trackless marshes where the heavy British cavalry could not follow. Legend has it that he once invited a British officer to a dinner consisting only of roasted sweet potatoes served on bark, demonstrating the meager conditions his men endured for the sake of liberty. Marion's mastery of the terrain and his ability to outmaneuver a superior enemy kept the flame of resistance alive in the South. His tactical genius turned the very landscape of South Carolina into a weapon against the invaders who sought to tame it. 15. The Lady in Black of Dock Street. The Dock Street Theater in Charleston is not only one of the oldest theatrical sites in America, but also the home of a legendary spirit known as the Lady in Black. Folklore tells of a beautiful woman named Nettie Dickerson who frequented the nearby Planters Hotel in the mid-1800s. After a life of misfortune and a tragic accident involving a lightning strike on the hotel balcony, she is said to have remained in the building. Witnesses often report seeing a shadow dressed in a floor-length black gown and a silken veil gliding across the second floor or standing near the stage. Unlike many malevolent spirits, the Lady in Black is described as a graceful, melancholic figure who seems to be eternally searching for something lost. Her presence adds a layer of gothic mystery to the theater, reminding modern audiences that the past is never truly gone in the Holy City. 14. The Over-Mountain Men at Kings Mountain. The Battle of Kings Mountain was a turning point in the Revolution that felt more like a family feud than a traditional war. In October 1780, a force of frontiersmen known as the Over-Mountain Men crossed the Appalachian Peaks to confront a loyalist army led by British Major Patrick Ferguson. These woodsmen were not trained soldiers. They were hunters and farmers who fought with long rifles and a fierce independence. They surrounded the wooded hilltop and climbed the steep slopes, using trees for cover as they picked off the redcoats from above. Ferguson, who had famously boasted that God himself could not move him from the mountain, was killed in the chaos. The victory was a crushing blow to British morale and proved that the backcountry settlers were a force to be reckoned with. It was an intensely personal victory that changed the course of American history and protected the interior. 13. The Gothic Grace of Poinsett Bridge. Tucked away in the woods of Greenville County is the Poinsett Bridge, a stunning stone structure that looks like it was plucked from a medieval fairy tale. Built in 1820, it is believed to be the oldest bridge still standing in South Carolina. It was part of the state road that connected Charleston to the mountains, designed by Joel Poinsett, the same man who introduced the poinsettia flower to America. The bridge features a perfect Gothic arch that spans Little Gap Creek, constructed without the use of cement or mortar. While its engineering is impressive, its reputation is somewhat darker. Local legends claim the bridge is haunted by the ghost of a worker who died during its construction, or perhaps by travelers who vanished along the lonely road. At night, the stone arch seems to hum with the energy of 2 centuries of footsteps and whispered secrets. 12. The Mystery of the Third Eye Man. The campus of the University of South Carolina in Columbia holds a strange urban legend that has terrified students for over 70 years. The story began in the late 1940s when a police officer reported seeing a man dressed in silver clothing emerging from the sewer tunnels. According to the report, the figure had a pale face and a third eye located in the middle of his forehead. Over the following decades, more sightings were reported near the Longstreet Theater, with students claiming to see a shadowy figure lurking in the darkness of the old catacombs beneath the city. Some believe he was a failed experiment from a forgotten laboratory, while others think he is a supernatural entity guarding the hidden passages. Whether he is a man or a myth, the Third Eye Man remains a chilling staple of campus lore that keeps students looking over their shoulders. 11. The unlikely survival of the Palmetto Tree. In June 1776, a fleet of 9 powerful British warships sailed into Charleston Harbor, intending to crush the burgeoning colonial rebellion. Their primary target was a half-finished fort on Sullivan's Island, constructed from the only material readily available, spongy palmetto logs and thick layers of sand. To the absolute astonishment of the British officers, their heavy iron cannonballs did not shatter the fort walls, but were instead absorbed or bounced harmlessly off the resilient fibrous wood. The soft logs simply swallowed the deadly projectiles like a sponge, allowing the colonial defenders to return fire with devastating accuracy. This miraculous defense led to a decisive victory that saved the city from occupation early in the war. The palmetto tree was so honored for its role in the battle that it was later placed at the center of the state flag, forever symbolizing the tough and unyielding spirit of South Carolina. Before moving on to story number 10, remember to subscribe and like to become an expert on the history of our wonderful country. 10. The accidental atomic attack on Mars Bluff. On a sunny afternoon in March 1958, a Boeing B-47 Stratojet was flying over the quiet community of Mars Bluff when a mechanical mishap occurred. A nuclear weapon, fortunately without its radioactive core, accidentally dropped from the aircraft and plummeted into the backyard of a local family named Greg. The conventional explosives within the bomb detonated upon impact, creating a massive crater 75 feet wide and 30 feet deep. The blast leveled the family garden, destroyed their playhouse, and injured several people, including children playing nearby. Miraculously, no one was killed in this surreal event, but the incident became a sensational piece of Cold War history. Today, the site remains a quiet reminder of a day when the atomic age literally dropped into the backyard of an unsuspecting South Carolina family, leaving behind a hole that the forest has yet to fully reclaim or let the locals forget. 9. The legend of the drunken pirate of Murrells Inlet. The winding creeks of Murrells Inlet are said to be haunted by the spirit of a pirate known as Drunken Jack. According to local lore, Jack was a member of a pirate crew who was left behind on a small island after he passed out from consuming too much stolen rum. His shipmates intended to return for him, but they were delayed by a storm and never made it back. Months later, when another ship finally anchored at the island, they found dozens of empty rum bottles scattered about, but Jack had vanished. Some say he perished from thirst, while others believe he simply became one with the marshes. To this day, boaters passing the island at night claim to hear the sound of clinking glass and low, boozy singing drifting over the water, suggesting that Jack is still enjoying his eternal stash of Caribbean spirits in the Low Country. 8. The ghostly sentinel of the Citadel. Within the historic barracks of the Citadel in Charleston, there is a legend that has been passed down through generations of cadets. It concerns the ghost of a cadet who supposedly died under mysterious circumstances in the early 20th century. Known as the red-haired ghost, or the ghost of Paget Thomas Tower, this spectral figure is said to appear in the hallways during the quiet hours of the night. Cadets have reported seeing a figure in an old-fashioned uniform walking the checkers, the black and white tiled walkway of the barracks. Sometimes he is seen standing at attention or performing a silent inspection of the rooms. Far from being a malevolent presence, the ghost is often viewed as a guardian of the school's traditions, a silent reminder of the discipline and duty that have defined the lives of the thousands of young men and women who have trained within those fortress walls. 7. The legacy of the Sweetgrass Weavers. Along the edges of Highway 17 in Mount Pleasant, you will find small wooden stands displaying intricate hand-woven baskets that represent one of the oldest African-style art forms in the United States. This is the tradition of sweetgrass weaving, brought to South Carolina by enslaved people from the West African rice coast. Originally used as functional tools for winnowing rice on the plantations, these baskets are now celebrated as masterful works of art. The technique, which involves coiling dried marsh grass and longleaf pine needles with palmetto fronds, has been passed down through families for over 300 years. These weavers are the guardians of a cultural bridge that connects the Low Country to its ancestral roots. Each basket is a testament to the resilience and creativity of the Gullah Geechee people, whose language, food, and craftsmanship continue to shape the unique cultural identity of the coastal islands and the surrounding region. 6. The first flight of the best friend of Charleston. In December 1830, the city of Charleston became the birthplace of American passenger rail service with the arrival of a steam locomotive named the Best Friend of Charleston. This iron beast was the first locomotive built entirely in the United States for regular service, and it signaled a new era of transportation for the state. On its maiden voyage, it carried over 100 excited passengers at the then blistering speed of 20 miles per hour. However, the story took a tragic turn just 6 months later when the boiler exploded because a frustrated fireman held down the safety valve to stop the annoying sound of escaping steam. While the original engine was destroyed, its legacy lived on as the catalyst for the development of the railroad industry in the South. A replica now stands in a downtown museum, honoring the short but explosive life of this pioneering machine that changed travel forever. 5. The spirits of the High Battery. The High Battery in Charleston is a scenic seawall that offers breathtaking views of the harbor, but it also hides a dark and somber history. During the early days of the city, this area was a site for public executions, particularly for pirates who were captured along the coast. Legend says that the bodies of these outlaws were often left hanging in cages as a warning to other marauders. Today, many visitors and locals believe that the spirits of these executed men still linger near the water's edge. There are frequent reports of cold spots, the feeling of being watched, and even the sight of shadowy figures swaying in the wind where the gallows once stood. The contrast between the beauty of the modern promenade and the grim echoes of the past makes the Battery one of the most haunted and atmospheric locations in a city that is already famous for its ghosts. 4. The fierce spirit of the Gamecock. Thomas Sumter was a man whose relentless fighting spirit earned him a nickname that would eventually become the identity of an entire university. During the American Revolution, British General Banastre Tarleton famously complained that Sumter fought like a gamecock, a bird known for its ferocity and refusal to back down even when outmatched. Sumter led a band of partisan fighters who harassed British supply lines and struck from the shadows of the backcountry. He was a leader who inspired fierce loyalty and utter terror in his enemies, often continuing the fight even after his home was burned and his troops were scattered. His legacy of tenacity and independence became a defining characteristic of the South Carolina people. Today, the Gamecock is more than just a mascot. It is a symbol of a man who refused to surrender when the fate of the state was hanging by a single bloodied thread. 3. The mystery of the Lake Murray Monster. Deep beneath the waters of Lake Murray, a massive reservoir near Columbia, there is a legend of a creature known as Messi. Since the lake was created in the 1920s, residents have reported seeing a long, serpentine beast breaking the surface of the water, often described as being over 40 feet long with humps like a sea serpent. Some believe that the creature is a descendant of prehistoric lake dwellers, while others suggest it might be a massive sturgeon or even an escaped exotic pet. The mystery is deepened by the fact that several towns and graveyards were submerged when the lake was flooded, creating a haunting underwater landscape of ruins where a monster could easily hide. Whether Messi is a biological anomaly or a shared hallucination, she has become a beloved part of local culture, with sightings continuing to spark debate and excitement among those who boat upon the dark, deep waters. 2. The first shots at Fort Sumter. The morning of April 12, 1861, changed the course of American history forever when the first shots of the Civil War were fired in Charleston Harbor. After months of tension, Confederate forces began a bombardment of Fort Sumter, a federal installation occupied by Union troops. The spectacle was so dramatic that residents of Charleston climbed onto their rooftops with picnic baskets to watch the exchange of fire, little realizing the decades of suffering that would follow. The fort was pounded for 34 hours until the Union commander, Robert Anderson, finally surrendered. Remarkably, during the entire bombardment, not a single soldier on either side was killed by enemy fire. The only casualties occurred during a 100-gun salute to the flag during the evacuation. This event marked the end of the old world and the beginning of a conflict that would tear the nation apart and redefine the American South for centuries. 1. The legend of the Seven Devils. In the heart of the Sandhills region, near the town of Casat, there is a stretch of woods that locals have avoided for generations. This area is home to the legend of the Seven Devils, a group of 7 twisted, gnarled trees that supposedly grew on a spot where 7 outlaws were hanged in the distant past. According to the folklore, the ground around these trees is cursed, and no grass or bushes will grow within the circle they form. Those who dare to venture into the grove at night report hearing the sound of whispering voices and the creaking of rope even when there is no wind. It is said that if you count the trees and find an 8th, you will never find your way out of the woods. The legend of the Seven Devils remains one of the most persistent and chilling tales in the South Carolina interior. A final reminder that some secrets are best left in the shadows. After watching these 33 stories about South Carolina, tell us, did you know any of them? Which one did you like best? Or which one surprised you the most? Let us know in the comments. Let's see how many of us share the same story. And if you think we've missed something or want to add something, we'd love to hear from you. Your feedback helps us improve each video. Also, if you noticed any pronunciation mistakes, thank you for your patience. We strive to improve with every video. And speaking of videos, there's another one playing right now so you can continue exploring the history of our beautiful country. But before you go, don't forget to subscribe and like so we can keep learning together. See you in the next one.